list that. So as I say, welcome to our last of the March webinars. We're talking this evening about woodland management and geospatial maps using myForest. I'm delighted to have George and Paul here from Silver Foundation to present their hard work over the last kind of 9 months. So a bit of an introduction to Northwoods. Hopefully a number of you that are on the webinar know who we are and what we're doing at the moment, but for those that aren't, we are a project that's been funded by the Forestry Commission to develop, support and disseminate innovation in woodland management across the northeastern Yorkshire in particular, and we're a consortium of different experts across the field. So we have it's hosted by Reheat, who are a biomass engineering and forestry consultancy firm. We have forestry expertise with Martin Glynn and RDI Associates. I've already mentioned the Silver Foundation, who are also working together with us, and Timber Auctions. And for those of you that were with us 2 weeks ago, we had Oliver Coombe presenting on how to sell your timber. And he also brings a lot of experience through Timber Auctions, which are Europe's leading online roundwood marketing service. So Northwoods Innovation Programme at the moment is, as I said, demonstrating and sharing innovative tools through webinars, events, case studies and other channels. We're also supporting innovators, so if you have an innovative idea that might help woodland management, please get in touch and our team can help support you with that idea. And finally, we're also developing innovative tools, of which one Paul and George will be talking about and demonstrating in just a moment. But there'll be other tools developing and being developed over the next couple of years. So please do keep an eye out on our project news, and you'll see more innovations coming online soon. So without further ado, George and Paul, or Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Great, thank you, Rosanna, and well, thank you for inviting us to speak this evening. So if you just move the slides, George, to the next slide. This is what we're going to do this evening. I'm going to do a quick introduction about Silver Foundation, just so that everyone knows who we are and why we've developed myForest. Talk a little bit about myForest, and then George is going to tell you what we've done with the development through this Northwoods programme and developing this new functionality as geospatial maps. He's going to do a live demonstration about how that works and how you can create maps, and then we're going to have a Q&A. So if you've got any sort of meaty questions, then keep them in the till the end for the Q&A. But if there's anything, just points of clarification, once George gets going with the demo, then please feel free to put them in chat, and I'll answer them as we go through. Next slide, George. So just a little bit about Silver Foundation. We're a small environmental charity. We're based in South Oxfordshire, but we work across Britain. So the site you'll see on the map there is our small centre at the in South Oxfordshire, the Silver Wood Centre, where we have a little forest, a little orchard. We have wood businesses, a forestry yard, and we teach people in wood making skills. So we've got a sort of a growing wood chain in a mini scale. But we want to promote that kind of thing more widely, and the benefits of woodland management. We talk about, rather than what we do, we talk about the way that we do things. So we're very innovative, and in particular, we have a USP of mixing our land management skills and forestry skills with web development. So we've got a number of web tools that we've developed, and myForest is the main one you'll see today. We do a lot of collaboration work. We're tiny as an organisation, so to be effective, we have to collaborate, and we love collaborating. And this Northwoods programme is a really good example of the collaborations we like to get involved in. And we do undertake training and advocacy to raise awareness about the issues around woodland management and woodland creation. And tonight is one of those things that we get involved with to support the work we do. Next, George. So some of the projects that we get involved in and some of the work we do specifically. So I've mentioned the Silva Wood Centre. We, as well as the Wood Centre that supports 20 wood businesses, we also have a wood school that teaches people of wood skills, wood making skills. We have a professional course which tries to bridge a gap between formal education and employment. And we have a specific unique selling point in that one as well, where we focus on homegrown timber. And we work with partners to try and create timber products that the students then sell to reduce the fees of their course. So quite an innovative solution to a traditional industry. Other web tools that we've created include NatureBid, which is an environmental funding platform that we created with the Environment Agency, and one which I think would be really interesting to this audience tonight, which is the Woodland Wildlife Toolkit. So this is a way of accessing a database of rare and declining woodland specialist species that may be in and around your woodland, and finding out what those species would like from a management point of view. So it's like taking a book of woodland wildlife and ripping out most of the pages apart from the 10 that are relevant to your woodland. So if you've got a chance, have a look at the Woodland Wildlife Toolkit. I think it could be really useful for you. Next, Jordan. So I mentioned earlier that we are a small organisation, so we have 10 members of staff, and quite unique setup for a small charity. So in here you'll see 3 foresters, 3 web developers, 2 people who teach woodworking, woodcraft skills, and then our support team from communications and accounts. But that blend of forestry, wood, and web skills is really where we have our uniqueness as an organisation. Next, George. So you're here tonight to learn about myForest. I'm going to give you a bit of background about myForest so that you understand the context. So when George goes into the detail, it makes sense. So myForest is a focused and simplified geographic information system, or GIS. Essentially, that means it's a digital map that allows you to store data in the background associated with that map, and then lead you down a pathway towards supporting your woodland management or woodland creation. Now, the reason that we've developed this is that there are other mapping platforms out there, but a lot of them are quite complex. Some of them are quite expensive. And we, many years ago, wanted to develop something that was really useful for forestry and woodland management. So this is when we say it's a focus tool, it focuses you and allows you to add information and create outputs that are specifically related to woodland management and woodland creation. Next slide, George. So some of the reasons that we've developed myForest, and Will and others may have told you about this stuff over the last few weeks if you've been to any of the other webinars, but I'm just going to quickly run through some of the issues. We're the second largest net importer of forest products in the world, despite being quite a small country. And the main thing to consider there is that many of our woodlands, and in England that's around about 50%, are undermanaged, and that's the point of the whole purpose behind the Northwoods Programme, is to provide support to get more woodlands into management. So you can imagine those 50% of woodlands aren't really achieving what they potentially could achieve just in this one service they could provide from timber. So, you know, there's certainly benefit that we could have there, that we lessen our imports and our carbon footprint that we're exporting to other countries at the moment. Next slide, George. So we got timber from a wildlife point of view. we've seen big declines in specialist woodland wildlife over the last 40 or 50 years. So this graph just shows how the bottom line shows how woodland specialist birds have declined in that period. If you looked at a graph of butterflies or plants, woodland specialists, they'd also have declined. And a lot of that's to do with the reduction of woodland management. So a lot of our woodlands have evolved with active woodland management, and that change in light that happens when you actively manage your woodlands, and that with that decline has created declines in our wildlife as well. Next slide, please. And of course, on the flip side of that, we're still very underwooded compared to many of our neighbours around Europe. So across the UK, about 13%, but in England, only 10% woodland cover. So if you look at France or Spain or Germany, all in the 30s, so in Italy as well, 30% woodland cover. We've come a long way since 1919 when it was down to 5%, but the governments have got huge targets to create new woodland, and you can see why when you look at that map. Next slide. So myForest, I told you, I mentioned earlier, it provides you with a solution, and this graphic kind of tries to explain the solution that we've provided. So at a very basic level, it provides you with a way to map your woodland, either existing woodland or new woodland, and that's really what George is going to focus on tonight. But underlying that is a way to store and update forest data, so things, species information about your volumes, ways that you can create felling licenses. So all that's related, all that's baked into myForest. You can then use that to do your planning work. So whether that's generating a management plan for approval, creating an application to get a felling license. And then finally, you take that information and you can use that in the woodland operations. And again, George is going to show you how you can start to use this new functionality we've created in woodland operations. Next slide. So from a mapping point of view, we've worked with the different regulatory bodies across the 3 nations in Great Britain. So FC means Forestry Commission, SF is Scottish Forestry, and NRW is Natural Resources Wales. Obviously, most of you will be relevant tonight will be for the Forestry Commission, but we just wanted to highlight the breadth of ability that myForest has generated over the last couple of years to create compliant maps in the 3 nations. Next, George. So at the moment, we have around about 185,000 hectares of forest mapped across Britain. That's around about 9% of the privately owned woodland in Britain. So we're now saying we're Britain's #1 forest creation and management software. So this is George's new strapline for tonight. Next slide, George. And you can access myForest for free. So we're a charity. We want to remove barriers to supporting woodland management. So we provide a lot of functionality for free, but we also need to create a sustainable funding model for myForest. So if you wanted extra functionality, you can get that through a paid plan, which is £24 a year for a forest owner or £120 a year for a forest agent. Next slide. As well as providing the functionality, we know we have to provide support. So we've got comprehensive guidance available within myForest. So lots of written guidance, as well as what we found really has worked well over the last couple of years is small myForest 2 or 3 minute video tutorials. So if you want to start using it or you are using it and you want to find out how to use a specific bit of functionality, there's lots of information in the guidance page you can delve into. Next slide. And we also provide a support desk as well. So me and George are available through the support desk to help you with any of the issues. So if you do have any issues, feel free to email us through the contact form. So as part of this Northwoods Innovation Programme, we're developing a suite of new functionality over the next 2 years. So the first bit that we're going to talk about tonight is this geospatial map downloads, which is quite exciting. It's something that we've wanted to do for 3 or 4 years, so we're delighted that we've been able to work with Northwoods to be able to create that. We're then going to, after that, work on some inventory, new inventory functionality. So this is trying to take some of the pain out of working out what's in your woodland, so that if you do some measurements and input it into myForest will do the calculations and try and work out what volumes you have in your woodlands. So that's something we're working on at the moment, and we hope to have that up and running for testing in the next 6 to 7 months. And then finally, we're working with timber auctions. Rosanna mentioned that Ollie from Timber Auctions was in one of the webinars last week. So we're working with Ollie to create standardized outputs that can come out of myForest and go into timber auctions. So that you can use it more, try and market your timber more easily. I just saw a question about what geospatial means. That's exactly what we're going to talk about now. So George is going to really make that very clear for you over the next 20 minutes or so. Is that it? Yeah, sorry, next slide. Right, okay, so perfect timing. Thank you, Joe, for that question. And I'm going to let George explain to you exactly what that is.
I think Joe's got the script for this evening. That's perfect timing. Yeah, so Paul's absolutely raised to everything. So if you've got any questions about myForest in general, please feel free to throw it in the chat. Paul's going to be monitoring that while we go through the live demo. So he can answer any questions that you might have around that. So throughout the demo, throw in any questions into the chat as well. Paul knows we've done this enough time now that he knows the perfect time to interrupt me as we go through everything. So we can ask any questions when they become relevant throughout the tutorial. So myForest and geospatial maps. So within myForest, we'll go through it. You can create different compartments and sub-compartments and add features, and that all melds into creating your maps that would go with a woodland creation plan alongside a woodland management plan, and what you might actually send to a contractor if they're doing any harvesting work or planting work. So the mapping aspect within myForest is central to everything else that falls out as a result of that. So at the moment, or previously in myForest, you were only able to ever download a printable PDF map. So they would be able to be sent out to a contractor that they could then print or have on their tablet, but as a stationary, non-interactive version. Geospatial maps are, well, completely game-changing within all of that. So it takes myForest from your computer, from a strictly desk-based activity, onto your phone, onto your tablet, and out into the field with you. So the photos that we've got here, it demonstrates how a geospatial map, when used with certain apps. So we'll talk about using this strictly with Avenza maps, but there's other third-party geospatial software that you can use and download. So Avenza Maps is a downloadable app, free to use, that you can get from the App Store or Google Store, depending if you use iOS or Android, and it creates the opportunity to download your map from myForest, import it into Avenza Maps or a geospatial mobile application, and then when you upload that map on your phone, on your tablet, as you can see from the mock-ups here, it adds your live location onto your myForest map. So if you were sending this to a contractor, if you were doing this while doing a survey or just walking around your site, you'd be able to see all of your mapping that you'd carried out within myForest on your phone, on your tablet. So it becomes really useful when working with people on site or trying to do a site survey, because you can add your live location, take the grid reference, add points, and then it means that suddenly myForest is a very much more user-friendly out in the field rather than having a paper copy of your map. So there's 5 stages of this demo. They'll range in length and complexity. So we're just going to have a look at the mapping backgrounds and the data layers. We're going to have a look at mapping a compartment and a couple of sub-compartments. We're going to look at mapping features. We're going to create a PDF map, and then we're going to download that map as a geospatial map that then you would be able to use on your phone or on your tablet. So it's a very succinct part of myForest. We're not going to do we're not going to look at everything just because of the time that we've got. I'm going to go through each of these steps separately. We'll have breaks in between for specific questions around that. But yeah, we'll jump into giving you a demo. So just reload this. So this is myForest. So I'm going to just log in here and open the app. So I'm going to go into my example here. I think that's the wrong example. So I just got logged out of all of this. So I've got to remember where I think it's management demo. Okay, so I've got a site that I've already done a lot of work on here. It doesn't matter that I've done a lot of work. We'll go through the process that you would do. So mapping your compartments or sub-compartments are one of the first things that you would look at within myForest. So having logged in, I've got the control bar on the left-hand side. This is where all of the information that I'm going to use for creating my maps, adding data, creating a management plan, importing shape files if I've already done mapping elsewhere. That's where all the magic's going to happen. The 2/3 of the screen are the live view mapping. So this is a live interactive map. I can zoom in and out, scroll around. I can use the search function in the top left here to find and pinpoint my site. But this is where you'll actually map your compartments, sub-compartments and features onto in a very interactive way. I've loaded it up with an Ordnance Survey mapping background. So the first thing we're going to look at is the different mapping backgrounds and the different data layers that are available and the reasons that you might use different aspects of that. So in the top left here, we have the mapping background drop down and then also the data layers drop down. So I'm going to start with the mapping background. So as I said, I've already loaded Ordnance Survey outdoor mapping. I might switch to Google Satellite, and immediately what becomes apparent is that this compartment's a little bit thinner than normal. But the ability to switch between the different mapping backgrounds that we have available in myForest is the first thing that might be interesting for you when looking at where you want to map your compartments, where you want to place your sub-compartments within that, and the different aspects of your site that you might want to explore through the mapping backgrounds. The second part of this is, I think it's a lot more interesting. So these are all of the data layers that we have available. So data layers are data sets from different organizations, from Forestry Commission or various other sources that contain specific information that might be relevant to your site. So depending on where you're based, we've got GB wide data layers, we've got England, Scotland and Wales specific data layers. We always say that because we've imported these data layers into myForest, it's always worth going back to the source of the information if you really want to double check everything before submitting your woodland management plan application or your England Woodland Creation Offer grant or your Scottish Forestry Woodland Creation Offer grant. So where you might go for that would all be in the guidance, but Magic is a good option, or Forestry Commission's land information search. There's more links to that in all of the guidance that Paul mentioned earlier. So on the site, I might turn on, so I know that there's going to be OS rivers. That doesn't really show as much on here. I might also show UK uplands. So these are areas above 500 feet, I think. Peat soil, so we can see that I know that within this area here, I've got a UKSO deep peat layer. Looking at some of the England specific ones, we've got ancient woodlands, so there's no ancient woodlands here. Flood zone risks, low risk areas, so that's the Forestry Commission's low risk area for planting. So there's lots of data layers for you to have a play with here. I'm using the England specific ones here because this site's based in the Peak District. So there's plenty for you to have a look at there. When you're doing your woodland management plan, doing a woodland creation plan, the data layers that might be relevant to your specific site will vary. So the UCO layers, so the England Woodland Creation Offer layers, are going to be relevant for creation only. Some of the other layers might be relevant for management only. So there's lots for you to have a play with and look at with the different data layers there. Are there any questions in the chat about mapping backgrounds or data layers, Paul? It might be.
No. Ellen's just asked if there's a US version. There's not, Ellen. I mean, in theory, the mapping could be used anywhere in the world, but we've got no specific US functionality. Also, if you want to fly me and George out to California to come and discuss it, then we're open to that, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
No, that's it, George. Crack on.
Brilliant. So we're going to have a look at mapping a compartment and two subcompartments now. So I understand that compartments, subcompartments, features, they all might be forestry jargon that you might not be familiar with. So within your site, according to the UK forestry standard, so the kind of regulatory guidelines that every forest creation or management plan needs to follow, an area of woodland that is owned by a single landowner would be defined as a forest management unit, or FMU. So depending on the size of your forest management unit or your site, you might choose to create multiple compartments, multiple subcompartments, and each of these are just functional management units that you would then describe in your management plan or in your creation plan. So you can see for the site here, if I move around the site, so all of my compartments are outlined in blue. So I've got 4 clear compartments. And the reason that these are split into compartments is because I've got a road that runs really nicely through my site, which clearly creates 4 compartments within that. Subcompartments are where you begin adding your data. We're not going to go into any of the data that we're adding here, but you can see that within this compartment 1, I have multiple subcompartments within that. So if I was to look at this compartment in particular, so I've got 6 different subcompartments within that. I might choose to separate these into subcompartments for different reasons. So you can see I've got a couple of footpaths that run through the site. I've got there's all of the labels have compiled there, but I've got a telephone mast and an access route that might influence my decision to place certain subcompartments in certain areas. But it means that for this compartment, I've created 6 functional management units, subcompartments within that area. You can see for this compartment 2, because of the area, because of the type of woodland, I only need 1 subcompartment. So depending on the type of site that you have, where your site is, you can have 1 compartment and subcompartment that is your entire site. You could have multiple compartments and multiple subcompartments. The complexity of your site is up to you to deliver. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to delete and then redraw subcompartment and compartment 3. So if I just delete that, so you can see from my ordnance mapping here, I've got a small section of woodland that runs along the road here. So coming to the control bar, every time you see a plus button, there's going to be new things that you're able to add into myForest. So to create a new compartment, I'm going to click the Add Compartment button here, and it gives me a pop-up. I can give that compartment a name or a number or a number. Forestry convention is that compartments have numbers, subcompartments have letters, and that's just when you create your maps that go into your management plan or creation plan. It means you can really clearly outline to Scottish Forestry Commission, the local woodland officer, what you intend to do within each area, and it's clearly labelled, clearly highlighted throughout your entire plan as appropriate. So I'm going to call this compartment 3, and I'm going to click the green Create Compartment button. This new compartment's jumped into the control bar here. I could move that by clicking, dragging and dropping, just because I'm nice and OCD with that. If I was to click the drop down here, I get the option to add a subcompartment. I'm not going to do that yet, but we'll get onto that. So for compartments, subcompartments and features all alike, you've got this options icon. So I'm going to click the options icon and I get a drop down menu of everything that I can do with this compartment. So for this compartment, I'm going to click the add mapping option. The control bar is going to change, so I can change the color if I want. I can also look at snapping. Again, snapping, I don't have time to get into it fully this evening, but it's essentially just being able to clip to your existing things. So you're going to see I'm definitely going to use that when drawing my subcompartments. I'm going to turn it off for now, just for make my life easier. So to draw my compartment, I'm just going to use consecutive clicks around the edge here. I'm using OS mapping backgrounds, so it's nice and straightforward. And as I just move around the edge of my compartment here, I think it's being a bit glitchy with my internet connection. As I move around the edge of my compartment, I'm going to click back in the red circle, which highlights the starting point, and my compartment's mapped. So you can see immediately the compartment area has been added, so it's 0.2 hectares. If I was to go into edit mapping, you can see at the bottom here, I also have the perimeter. So that might be interesting for deer fencing or something else. I'm going to click the add subcompartment button, and this allows me to add a subcompartment name and letter as convention. I also get to choose if it's a creation or a management subcompartment. This will just dictate the type of data that you're able to add to a subcompartment. So depending on what your subcompartment is for, whether it's for managing existing woodland or creating a new woodland, you can have a play around with those. I'm going to click the management one and then create my subcompartment. So to map the subcompartment, I'm going to go through the same process as before. This might get a bit repetitive while we go over it. Click to add options and then add mapping option. I'm going to turn snapping on and turn it to corners just for speed, but it essentially means that I can snap to my existing mapping that I've already done, and it just makes the process nice, quick and smooth. Clicking back in the red circle to finish that subcompartment, and we can see my subcompartment now has the 0.2 hectares. Just to go over the process again, I'm going to draw a subcompartment in this compartment 4. You can see I've already drawn a couple of compartments, subcompartments within that. But just to repeat the process, so I'm going to go into compartment 4, click add subcompartment. I'm going to give it the letter C, call it a management subcompartment, and then create. Clicking the 3 dots, add mapping. Again, I'm going to snap to corners, and just very quickly, this isn't going to be accurate at all just because of the time we've got with the demo. I'm just going to move around the edge of the compartment here and add my mapping. Are there any questions, Paul, just while I finish this off about mapping compartments or subcompartments?
No, not at the moment. Thanks, George.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to click back in the red circle. As I said, there's a bit of an overlap. I've not been quick with it, not been accurate with it at all. So I've now effectively mapped my entire site here, which is great. So if there aren't any questions, we're just going to jump straight into the next segment. So mapping features. So as you can see, I've already got a few features within this compartment 1. So I've got a linear feature, which is this footpath. I've got a polygon feature, which is this access route. And I've got a point feature, which is this individual telephone mast. So I'm just going to come and make up a few things in this subcompartment 1A just to demonstrate how to do it. As Paul said, there's lots of guidance on how to do this. So just collapsing the compartments to make this really obvious. I've got this features section within my control bar. Again, I've got the plus button to add a new feature, and I've also got a list of all of the existing features that I've mapped. I'm going to click the plus button. Again, I get a pop-up, so I can give the feature a name. So I might just call this, keyboard disconnected, call it example, example 1. So I'm going to start with a point feature. So the difference will hopefully become obvious. A point feature is just an individual point on your map. A linear feature is a line, and then a polygon is just an area within your map. I'm going to click create feature, and you can see my example features appeared in the control bar there. Hopefully you're getting this now and gaining familiarity with it. I'm going to click the options icon and then click the add mapping. So here I can choose to add the point directly. You can add via grid reference or lat long reference, or alternatively, like I'm going to do, I can just click on the map to mark my point feature. I'm going to go through the process again and create a linear feature. So I'm going to example 2, call this a line, and then go through again, clicking the options icon, add mapping, and then again, I'm going to draw a new footpath along my subcompartment. So a linear feature, depending on if you're using a Mac or a Windows computer, you might have to click Control and click, or right click. I can never remember what it is for a Windows, but for a Mac, a right click will end the drawing. Just to show you one last time, this time with a polygon feature. So I'm going to click Polygon Example 3, create feature, and again, options icon, add mapping, and then turn the snapping off. I can draw my feature in there. Are there any questions about drawing mapping features, Paul?
No, not at the moment. You must be doing an incredible job. I'm sure we'll get some at the end, but yeah, no, it's all
brilliant. Okay, so moving on to the fourth step, we're actually going to create the map now. So it's a little bit confusing in the sense that I've gone through, I've mapped my compartments, my sub-compartments, and my features. Why can't I just download this straight away? So depending on the complexity of your site, what you intend to do, it's likely that you will have to create multiple maps depending on the stage of the application or the plan you're at. So for a management plan, as an example, you'll probably have to produce 3 or 4 different maps. If you're then doing operational plans after that, you've got another couple of maps that you might have to make. So simply being able to download this doesn't make sense in a forestry context, because we might want to include or exclude certain aspects of the map depending on its end purpose. So I'm going to collapse the features section there just to make it really obvious again. So in the control bar, I've got this section called maps. So again, I've got a plus button, meaning I can do something or add something. So clicking that, I can add a new map. So I'm going to call this example and then click the green create map icon, and you can see my new map is in the control bar. Clicking on the options icon again, you see I've got a list of options that I can go through. So we're going to get into the download options in the next step. But for now, I'm going to click this edit map option. The control bar automatically changes, and suddenly I've got this big rectangle in the middle of my map. So because we're downloading a PDF map or a geospatial map, it's not interactive as in myForest is, in the sense that we can click, drag, and move around wherever we want, whenever we need. So everything on the interior of this rectangle is what will be visible. It's the visible extent of your map. Everything that's slightly grayed out is no longer visible. So I can move around, and then clicking the 4-headed arrow, I can drag and drop my rectangle wherever I want. There's a little bit of a caching issue there for Paul to take note of. So in the control bar, I can set up my map exactly how I want. So I can change the title, I can change the map scale, I can change the mapping background, the paper size, margin, orientation, all that kind of stuff. So if I start for this site, I'm going to change the mapping scale to 1 to 5,000. My grid's going to shrink, and suddenly the mapping extent is a little bit different than before. I think I can just about fit everything for my site on this map. Again, depending on the purpose of your map, you might want to use a different scale. You also have the option where you want to insert a custom scale if you need it. You can also change the mapping background, so you might opt for a Google satellite mapping background. I'm going to stick with Ordnance Survey. Roads or outdoor, it's not a huge difference. You can change the orientation of your map if you wanted. It's all up to you to make it as custom as you want. So how do I actually begin adding everything that I've already drawn? So in the control bar, we've got a section called layers here. So layers are effectively adding another layer of cling film over your map and adding onto that specific layer everything that you want to be visible on that layer. So each layer is a different item that will appear in your map legend or your map key when you eventually download it. So it's what actually is the most useful part of the map, because it makes sense of everything for you. So to add a new layer, I'm going to click the plus button again, and I've got this new layer pop up here. So the color that you see on the left hand side is what the color of the items that you've added will appear on your map. So to start playing with that, I can click on the options icon, edit this layer, and I get this little pop-up in the top corner. I can change the map, the layer title, so I might call this my compartments. I can change the fill color, so I'm actually going to keep it white, but I can change the opacity. So I'm going to set the opacity to 0 so it's completely translucent. I can change the line color. So I'm going to change the line color to a deep blue, and I'm going to change the line width to 2. I can close that now. And so what I'm going to do is click on the options icon again, and then go into select mapping. So here I get a list of everything that I've previously mapped that I can actually add to this downloadable map. So I'm going to check all my compartments. So you can see that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all there, but the sub-compartments and the features have been left unchecked. I'm going to click the green confirm button, and as we can see, my map's a little bit small, but all of the compartments have been added there for me. I'm going to create another layer. So I'm going to click the plus button and go through the same process again. So edit this layer. I'm going to call this sub-compartments. I'm going to change the fill color to a deep red, but I'm going to set the opacity to 2, and I'm going to have a red line color with the width at 1. Options icon again, and then select mapping. This time, so as an example, I'm going to select only a few sub-compartments. So this illustrates how it might work in that operational sense of, let's say that I'm wanting to do some replanting, restocking, or harvesting within some of these compartments or sub-compartments, that I might want to then pass my geospatial map onto the contractor so that they know they're in the right place. They've got their live location in relation to the entire site. So it just means that I know when I send them onto my site with a geospatial map of what I want to do and the contract of what they should be doing, I know that I don't need to be on site anymore. I know that they'll be in the right place, they'll be felling the right trees, and they'll be doing the right work. So it takes all of the stress out of your core and gives you confidence that when you send people on site to do work, they'll be in the right place. So I'm going to click 1B, 2A, 3A, so the sub-compartment I mapped, and then a couple within compartment 4. I'm going to click the green confirm button, and look at that. I've got my 5 sub-compartments that I'm going to send people out on site to do work, mapped nicely within my map. So just to illustrate a few other things, I'm not going to add them because of the complexity of everything, but I could start adding labels. So I could choose to add existing labels. I'm not going to do that for this illustration, but I could also add a new label. So this is where you can start adding more information. So I could put a label, move it to subcompartment 1B, and just put in the access via roadside. So you can begin adding up the more information to your site here. What I could also do, if I add a new label here, I might choose to call this one badger set. This time I want to make it really accurate, so I'm going to choose to add an anchor. So an anchor here is a movable point that I can add within a map, knowing that the label is not going to get in the way. So especially talking in a geospatial mapping sense now, I can have a lot of labels, a lot of information out of the way on the corner of the map, so they're not getting in the way of you actually being able to see the feature that you're looking at, but know that it's clearly illustrated where exactly I mean. So this might be a badger set, it might be a bridge, it might be site access, it could be anything within your site that you really want to point out and pinpoint. We're also able to add, so in the control bar here, we've got all of the different data layers that we've got. So a good example might be, I'm creating my woodland creation plan. I don't want anyone within that deep peat layer. I don't want any equipment on it. I don't want any planting taking place on it. I don't want anyone near it. So adding that data layer to my geospatial map, I now know that as anyone gets closer to that map, that feature, their live location will be on it, so that they'll know when they're getting close to it, when they're on it. So it means that I'm confident again that I've clearly marked that that's going to be a key feature in my map legend when I download it. No one's going to be near it. The last thing you can do is add extra context. So this is just a little bit of extra text that you're able to add that will appear in the map legend again. I'll just put in a bit of example text here, just to illustrate that. So are there any questions about maps, Paul, before I save and get onto the last step here?
No, not at the moment, George.
Brilliant. Okay. So with everything added, I've got my layers, my labels, data layers, extra content, everything I want, map set up exactly how I like it. I can click this green save and close button. So now we're going to come on to the last step, so stage 5 here, which is actually downloading it and using it in the real world, which is the exciting part. So I've come back to the standard myForest view. I've got all of my lovely mapping here, all of the features, everything that I might need. In the control bar, I've got my example map. So I'm going to click on the options icon again, and now I've got 2 options. So the first option is to download a stationary PDF map. I'll download both just to show you the difference. So a PDF map is something that is slightly higher quality. So if you're looking to print it, we would recommend it's not a case of just downloading a geospatial and it fits every bill. If you're looking to print your map or include it in a woodland management plan application, we do recommend the higher quality version. You see there's a little pop-up, a spinning wheel while the map generates, and I can download that. So clicking on that download, this is now a PDF version. So I could include this in my application. So you can see I've got my map title, map scale, I've got my key with my compartments, sub-compartments, my data layers, my example extra text, all of my labels are there, and all of the map copyright is there as well. Just to show you the difference now, I'm going to click back on the options for that map, but this time I'm going to download a geospatial version. So again, you'll go through this buffering phase while the map generates. So I'm not going to be able to illustrate it. Avenza maps, because it only works on mobiles and tablets. I can't get it up on the screen to show you where I am in location to this site, but I can download this map. And if I open it up, so you can see the quality is slightly worse, just because it's a geospatial version of it. So now if I was to download this on my phone or on my tablet, I would, as the mock-ups showed, as the photos showed, I would, when I load this up in the app, I would have my live location in relation to all of these features on the map that I could have on my phone, on my tablet, while I take it into the site. It's a really simple process. So now that I've downloaded the map, you can just email it to yourself and then upload it onto your phone or tablet. There's various cloud options that you could use. But once you've downloaded your geospatial map from myForest, the process of actually uploading it into Avenza or other softwares that have that mobile or tablet functionality, it's just a couple of clicks. So it's nice and straightforward. That's everything as part of the demo. If there's any questions, fire away. If you need anything repeating, please fire away. We've got quite a bit of time now for Q&A, I think. But yeah, otherwise, thank you very much.
Thanks, George. There's no specific questions on the functionality at the moment, although I think that was a quick run through. We've got Will Richardson. Would you like to come on screen and tell us your question, please?
Hi, Paul. Hi, George. Nice to see you both. So yeah, it's fantastic. Congratulations for getting this function working. Can I import shapefiles from other GIS platforms such as Esri shapefiles or QGIS geo packages, and are they compatible with yours?
Yeah, so I can give you a quick example of how to do that. Again, all of this is in the guidance page on myForest, because I'm going to run through this really quickly. So in the control bar here, we've got this section at the bottom called the tool section. So if I was to open that up, you can see there's a whole host of things for you to play with here. You can see that there's an import mapping and an export mapping option. So if you used ArcGIS or QGIS or another mapping software, you could import that. So you can import KML, KMZ, GeoJSON shapefiles. That will accept multiple different projections, so you don't have to worry about that. You can choose to import them as compartments, sub-compartments, or features. They'll automatically appear once you click the green import button. They'll automatically appear in the control bar for you. You can then plug them straight away into a geospatial map, or you can edit them and add data however you choose. Again, if you want to work in reverse, there's also the export mapping option, so you can export anything that you create in myForest. So it's a completely compatible software with other solutions out there.
And does that include point data, line data, and polygon data, all three?
Yeah, just it.
Thanks, Will. Will, do you want to stay on? I just want to ask you a quick question.
Okay.
Back again. So, this new geospatial. I know we keep talking about geospatial, but how do you see it being useful to you, and from a management point of view? Do you think you would use it, or you'd encourage other people to use it?
Yeah, definitely. 100%, Paul. Very much so. For all the reasons that George has highlighted, I'd add to that when you're wanting harvesting work done, the way that you can pinpoint hazards and constraints, I think, yeah, really, really useful.
Yeah,
I definitely use it. I do produce geospatial maps from QGIS, and yeah, they're invaluable.
okay.
Obviously, you need to be able to then pass that on to whoever you're using, and for them to be able to understand how to use them as well. It's just going to take a bit of time for everyone to get used to it, but yeah, definitely, it's the way forward. I hope that the regulators, Forestry Commission, RPA, etc., start to accept our shapefiles, and not just sending them PDF maps. We can send them the data and they can load it up onto their systems.
Yeah.
And actually, you can see this being a benefit to those guys as well, because they can collect data, point data. So, whether that's historic environment features, whether it's locations of protected species. So George highlighted that, but more information on location of peat. We know that the existing peat maps aren't that accurate, and if we can build that, help them to build that data, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Will. That's useful. George, John has asked if you can edit in Avenza and upload to myForest.
Yeah. So in Avenza you can. I've not played around with it too much, but there are ways that you can add points. So say you were going out onto a site, you had your myForest map loaded up on your phone, you could add point data within Avenza there. The functionality to then import, so you can, depending on it, well, from my understanding, Avenza also has a free versus a paid version. So if you had a paid version of Avenza, you can then export all of your points as shapefiles, as Will asked, and then import them directly into myForest. The slightly hacky way around that, I guess you could call it. So if you wanted to use a free version of Avenza, from that point data that you collect on the map on the app as you go around your site, you can then export as a CSV, I think, with the grid reference or lat long. You can then, if you wanted, use the locate function within myForest to add that. So depending on if you have free versus paid versions, it's slightly different. But yeah, you can add stuff in Avenza, but it's just then how you bring it back into myForest if you want that.
Yeah, so I think the thing at the moment is that if you're on site and collect that and point something out, or click on a feature that you're at, say a badger set that you found, or a raptor nest, you can then go back in and, as George said, find that by using the locate. But you can also, one other thing that we added in this update, as George mentioned, if you go to the features, George, on the point data, you can add a feature by adding it through adding a grid reference or a lat and long. So you can take that information from Avenza and just type it in, and it will add it very accurately on the map to where you want to add that. So that's a bit of a sort of slightly clunky way to get around it, but at least it's providing you with some interaction between the Avenza map and myForest. Thanks, George. There's another question from Joe. Is there a plan to make is a plan to make it work with forestry woodland forms and autofill compartments, i.e. more like a spreadsheet rather than maps. So myForest, if I'm getting you correctly, and Joe, you're very welcome to jump on and ask this question specifically, but myForest has some functionality that allows you to, that creates an autofill of some of the Forestry Commission's forms. So by entering your data into the sub-compartments, you can then click create management plans, as George is showing here. And you can also on the left, if you cancel that now, George, you can see something on the left there called plan of operations. So that's the big, if you've ever created a plan of operations, this is the big Excel spreadsheet that the Forestry Commission need to generate all your filing licenses. And this is automatically generated through the myForest database. So myForest takes all of your drawings with all of the sizes of your subcompartments, and then extracts all the data and puts it into that form. So yeah, absolutely, it can do that. I think there's there might be a bit of guidance on that somewhere, and if not, and you need a bit of help, then just send in an email and me and George will jump on a Zoom call and show you how to do that. Brilliant. We answered that correctly, George. Excellent. Well, I think we're getting towards the end. We maybe have a chance for one last question in the 3 minutes towards the end, if there's anything else. If not, I might hand back to Rosanna to wrap up. Rosanna?
Thanks, Paul. And if anyone does have any questions that they think of later this evening or tomorrow morning or in a week's time, you can get in contact, obviously, with George and Paul through the Silver Foundation and myForest website, or you can drop us an email at Northwoods and we can always pass on your request. We have Mark Phillips typing, so we might hold off and see if there's time for one last question. He just says thanks for the demonstration. And I think I'd like to echo that. It's been really exciting to see this develop over the last few months. And I know that you guys have been excited about it. Will's obviously spoken about the benefits for both managers, but also woodland owners. So hopefully everyone that's on the call has got a lot out of this. We have sent you an evaluation form, so we'd love your feedback on the webinar, on the speakers and the content. And if you'd like any more myForest webinars, please pop that in there as well, and we can try and get George and Paul, or certainly Paul, back again to speak about this in the future. So yeah, we'd be really grateful for your feedback. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all for attending. Thank you, Paul and George, for putting that together and presenting that to us this evening. And good evening to everyone.
Cheers, everyone.